In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a giraffe cake step by step. This is a list of supplies you may need. A Rice Krispie recipe and all the ingredients. Usually they call for a bag of marshmallows, about 6 cups of cereal, and about a third stick of margarine. You need a sturdy cake board, for example I used a 9-inch, a bamboo skewer for stability, fondant. You're going to need about 24 ounces. You can either use the pre-made Wilton fondant or your favorite recipe, whichever you prefer. Gum paste adhesive or piping gel. You can make gum paste adhesive by dissolving small amounts of gum paste into a tablespoon of water to create the glue. Allow to sit for a few minutes to become tacky. A small paintbrush to apply the adhesive. You'll also need a small amount of icing to cover the body of the giraffe. Toothpicks if desired to stabilize ears. Begin by making a full batch of Rice Krispies using your favorite recipe. Mold the body, head, and feet while the Rice Krispies are still relatively warm to create the shapes. When the Rice Krispies are still warm, it is easier to shape them. And it's best to use a little bit of Crisco on your hands to stop the Rice Krispies from sticking to you. As the body of the giraffe is cooling, you can assemble the pieces temporarily to check the dimensions. This cake was one I did for a baby shower, so I created different body proportions to give it a more baby shower feel, as well as a more animated feel. If the sizes look good to you, disassemble and allow the pieces to cool separately on waxed paper. The next step is to cover the pieces with icing. The reason for this is to allow the fondant to adhere to the Rice Krispies underneath. This also helps you to smooth out any rough spots on the Rice Krispies, as it will be easier to smooth the fondant on top. Once the color is added to the fondant, unless you are using pre-colored fondant, you can begin cutting out the pieces to cover the body. However, keep in mind that the colors of the fondant will darken with time. So if it is a lighter shade that you want, it will be okay when it darkens. Since the body is the main attribute and the center of the giraffe, it is the best place to start and build up from there. Once the body of the giraffe is attached to the cake board using icing, it is time to attach the fondant covered head. The reason that we use icing underneath is to keep the cake from sliding off the board. To stabilize the giraffe, push a sturdy bamboo skewer through the top of the head, but don't worry because the rod will be hidden by the end. A good way to hide the seams in the fondant or any rough spots is to attach a nose. Cut out a piece of white fondant and attach to the nose of the giraffe using the gum paste adhesive or the piping gel. Not only will this hide the seams, but it also gives the giraffe a more animated look. A white chest piece can also be added using the gel or the adhesive. I added this piece of fondant to bring in the white of his nose. However, make sure that the fondant is relatively thin, so that the pieces can flow together. The next step is to attach the feet to the cake board. If you made the feet different sizes, add the smaller ones towards the front and keep the larger ones further back. Again, be sure to use a little bit of icing underneath to attach the feet to the cake board. You can add a cute little tail by rolling a small piece of fondant into a log shape. It's best to use the piping gel to attach the tail to the cake board. The icing can get a little bit messy, so the piping gel works best. You can also form his ossicones, which are his horns, in the same way. Now it's time for his eyes and his ears. Form his ears in a leaf-like shape and allow it to dry. Be careful, if his ears are not dry, they will not be able to stand erect and the fondant may tear. It may take a few hours to harden. Another technique is to take 50% gum paste and 50% fondant and mix together. This will harden in half the time. However, the ears will no longer be edible. Make sure on the ears to keep a small portion flat to allow the ears to adhere to the head. To make his eyes, roll a little bit of black fondant into square shapes. To give them a little bit more realism, add small white highlights to the tops of the eyes. The final touch are his spots. Just like in real giraffes, the spots do not need to be perfect. Cut out the spots from some thin, brown fondant. The more abstract the spots, the cuter he is. Attach each spot with some piping gel or gum adhesive. Now it's time to attach all of his little details and bring him together. Attach the eyes and ears using piping gel. You may choose to stabilize his ears using the toothpicks. Attach his ossicones and hold until the adhesive is dry, normally within a few minutes. If you want, add a small strip of brown around the tops of them, as well as a furry tail. A fluffy mane can be added to hide the bamboo skewer. To add some small extra features, I took 2 small pieces of black fondant to create the nose, and used the end of the paintbrush to create the mouth line. This is what he looks like when fully assembled. Here you can see the nose and the smile. The next pictures are a close-up of his mane as well as his tail. To create the fluff, I simply took a strip of fondant and cut small slits into it, making sure not to cut all the way through. And there you have it, a step-by-step to making a giraffe cake.